The Iron Throne had never felt so cold beneath a king, Aerys the Set. Targaryen sat hunched forward, his long, unkempt silver hair damp with sweat, his breath wheezing through yellowed teeth. Fire danced in the hearth beside him, but even that could not warm the chill that clung to his bones. His mind, once brilliant, now twisted, was ablaze with fear and visions of betrayal. They all wanted his throne. Rhaegar with his songs and stolen bride, Tywin with his gold and silent defiance, even Jaime, that golden boy knight who smiled too easily. Everyone was a traitor waiting for their chance. Everyone except one man, Eddard Stark. Aerys had seen him once in court, quiet, grim, unbending, not charming, not ambitious, just honorable. Too honorable to be a threat. That's why the flames whispered his name when Aerys asked who could save the realm from the rot of his bloodline. The council chamber filled with the scent of burning wood and fear when the king summoned his small council. Varys, ever calm, tilted his head when Aerys declared, "Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell shall be named my heir." Silence. Grand Maester. Pycelle opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tywin wasn't there. He hadn't attended court in months. Varys stepped forward. "Your Grace, the north is far. Lord Stark is not of Targaryen blood." "He is not of fire," Aerys hissed. "But fire consumes fire. Only ice can preserve what remains." It was madness, but no one dared challenge him, not openly. Aerys sent raven after raven across the realm. Some laughed, others panicked. The North received the news with disbelief. Ned Stark was away fighting in the rebellion alongside Robert Baratheon. In his stead, his brother Benjen opened the scroll, read it twice and said only, "This is not a blessing." Robert Baratheon flew into a rage when he heard. "That lunatic thinks he can split us," he roared, smashing a goblet against the stone wall. "He thinks naming Ned will turn us against each other." But it wasn't just a mad king's tactic. It worked. Rumors spread fast. Ned had been offered the throne. Ned would kneel. Ned was the North's ticket to power. Every whisper planted seeds of doubt in the rebellion's unity. When word reached Ned at the camp near the Trident, he was stunned. "It's a lie," he said at first, but when the raven came with the king's seal, his heart sank. Catelyn watched her husband for hours that night as he sat alone. "You won't accept it," she said gently. "I don't want it," he murmured. "But what if turning it down brings more death?" Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Rhaegar was returning from the south. He had finally decided to end the rebellion himself, but upon his arrival his father's new decree hit him like a sword in the gut. "Eddard Stark?" he growled, crumpling the parchment. "He would give my birthright to a northerner, a usurper?" Elia watched him pace the room. "Aerys has gone too far. The realm will not follow a Stark." But it was too late. The mad king had started a fire no one could control. In the Reach, House Tyrell sat in silence. In Dorne, the Martells prepared for vengeance. And in the Westerlands, Tywin Lannister finally made a move, marching his army not in support of the king, but toward King's Landing, under the guise of restoring order. Whispers turned into mutiny. The realm was fracturing. In the rebel camp, Stannis urged Robert to march fast. "Whether Stark accepts or not, this ends now, before the lords change sides." Robert stared across the fire at Ned. "If I find out you even think about wearing that crown, we're done." Ned didn't reply. He didn't need to. That night, another raven arrived. Aerys wanted Ned in King's Landing to swear his loyalty before the court and accept his place as heir. Ned read the message, then stared into the fire. He didn't want the throne. He wanted peace. But peace, he was beginning to understand, had a terrible cost. The gates of King's Landing creaked open just after dawn. Eddard Stark rode through them under the wary watch of gold cloaks. his cloak stained with travel dust, and his face unreadable. Behind him, only a small escort, soldiers loyal not to the crown, but to the man whose name had just been dragged across every firelit hall in Westeros. King's Landing reeked of smoke and fear. Merchants whispered about Tywin's army moving toward the city. Small folk ran at the mention of Rhaegar returning. And now, the supposed heir to the throne, an outsider from the icy north, had arrived under direct summons from the Mad King himself. Varys greeted him in the Red Keep, gliding silently across the floor like a ghost. "Lord Stark," he said smoothly, "His Grace awaits. He's unwell, but eager." "I am not here for crowns," Ned said firmly. Varys smiled faintly. "No one who wants a crown should wear one, my lord. But sadly, this realm is not built on want. It is built on fire, blood, and fear." He led Ned to the throne room, where the Iron Throne loomed like a cage made of blades. And there sat Aerys, his skin sallow, eyes burning with something between triumph and terror. "You came," Aerys said, voice raspy. "Good. That means you understand your destiny." Ned bowed stiffly. "I came to hear what you've done, and to say what I must. I am no king. My place is in the north, not on your throne." Aerys stood suddenly. "You will sit that throne. You will burn the rot out of this realm with cold steel. Rhaegar betrayed me. His sons will betray you. But you will be my justice." "I do not want justice born of madness," Ned replied, "and I will not be your heir." The room was still. Even the flames in the braziers seemed to lean closer. "You will be," Aerys snarled, stepping down the iron steps. "Because if you are not, then all I have left is the poison in my bloodline." Ned didn't flinch. "Then may the gods have mercy on you." Before Aerys could answer, the doors banged open. "Your Grace," barked a soldier, "the Lannisters have arrived. They claim to come in peace." Aerys paled. "Tywin, that snake. He dares come now." Outside the gates, Tywin's banners waved in the wind. Lord Tywin Lannister, his armor untouched by dust, stood beside Jaime, who watched. The city walls with a silent, unreadable gaze. The Lannister host was massive, well-fed, and far too calm. Inside the throne room, panic flared. Varys whispered in Aerys's ear, but the king pushed him away. "We'll open the gates. Let him in. If he betrays me, burn them all. Every last one." Ned's eyes flicked to the pyromancer standing nearby. Wildfire. There were casks hidden all over the city. Aerys had plans, mad plans. A short while later, Tywin strode into the throne room, his steps echoing like hammers. "My king," he said with perfect composure, bowing low, "I come to protect the city. The rebels are close." Aerys narrowed his eyes. "And why now?" "Because now, your grace, you have given the realm a reason to doubt. Naming Lord Stark was bold." Ned and Tywin's eyes met briefly. A moment passed between them, calculating, cold. Then Aerys shouted, "Enough! If I am betrayed, let the flames judge us all. The dragons are gone, but fire still answers to me." That night, the Red Keep became a cage of tension. Rhaegar's return was expected within days. Robert Baratheon and his army were closing in. The capital was a tinderbox, and in his chambers Ned Stark stood before a map of the city, his hands clenched behind his back. He had refused the crown, but that didn't stop the rumors. That didn't stop men from plotting in his name or against it. Master Qyburn, sent from the citadel under strange circumstances, approached him with grim news. "There are whispers, my lord, that if Aerys dies before Rhaegar arrives, the lords may place you on the throne, whether you want it or not." Ned shook his head. "Then they are fools. This is not my fight." But as the sun set over the Red Keep, wildfire beneath the streets, betrayal brewing in the halls, and madness clinging to the Iron Throne, Eddard Stark realized something. Whether he wanted it or not, the realm had already begun to choose. The bells rang before dawn, not for a wedding, not for mourning, but for war. Rhaegar Targaryen had arrived at the gates of King's Landing, armored in black plate with a red dragon on his chest, his silver hair tied back like a crown of fire. He rode at the front of a proud but thinned host, loyalists from Dorne and the Crownlands who still believed in dragons. Behind him, banners of Martell, Darklyn, and even remnants of House Velaryon flapped in the wind. At his side rode Sir Arthur, Dane silent as ever, and Prince Lewin Martell, eyes narrowed with rage. The news had reached them days ago. Aerys had named Eddard Stark his heir, madness upon madness. Inside the city, the Red Keep bristled with tension. Aerys had refused to send ravens. He wanted Rhaegar to come, to kneel, or to burn. Ned Stark stood at the battlements as Rhaegar's army halted just outside the walls. He felt the eyes of every guard on him. Some looked at him with doubt, others with hope, and a few with fear. The rumors hadn't stopped. Despite his refusal, some now called him King in the North and South. Tywin Lannister stayed curiously, quiet, hosting feasts in the halls as if the city wasn't on the brink of implosion. Jaime Lannister, still wearing his Kingsguard white, stood watch over the Mad King, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. At midday, the Raven came. Rhaegar demanded an audience, and he would only speak to Ned. In the Tower of the Hand, Ned paced. "He wants to confront me," he muttered to Catelyn, who had arrived quietly in the night. "He thinks I stole his crown." "You didn't," she said softly, "but he's a prince raised on prophecy. That kind of man never forgets what should have been his." Ned rode down to the gates under heavy guard, through streets emptied of joy. There, he met Rhaegar, Targaryen face to face for the first time. The prince looked tired, worn from war, from death, from prophecy. His violet eyes studied Ned for a long moment, then he spoke, voice low and tight with pain. "Why did you let him do it?" "I didn't," Ned replied. "He named you over. Me over my sons, my blood. I refused it." Rhaegar laughed bitterly. "Refused it? Then why are they whispering your name in every corner of this realm?" "Because your father has made this realm mad," Ned said sharply. "They see something new in me, something not born of fire, but I never asked for it." "Then you should leave this place," Rhaegar said, "because once I take that throne, anyone who stood near it will be judged." The words hung in the air like a blade. But Rhaegar wasn't the only one planning his next move. Back in the Red Keep, Aerys had begun to unravel. He ordered the pyromancers to ready the wildfire. "If Rhaegar enters the city with sword drawn, we burn it all," he whispered to Varys. "We burn the traitors, we burn the city, we burn the future." Varys, hidden in the shadows, slipped through hidden doors and sent ravens no one would admit to reading. Whispers carried from cellars to chambers, and one name echoed, Jaime Lannister. The next night, everything broke. Rhaegar made camp outside the city, demanding Aerys surrender the throne. Aerys responded with madness. He ordered every gate closed and gave the final word to the pyromancers. Ned had seen enough. He went to Jaime, who was watching the empty hall in silence. "The king means to burn it all," Ned said. "I know," Jaime answered. "Then stop him." Jaime's eyes flicked to Ned's. "And who will stop me when it's done? You?" But Ned didn't answer. At dawn, screams echoed from the throne room. Aerys was dead, slain by Jaime Lannister, who now stood silent and pale before the Iron Throne, the blade still wet. Wildfire had not been lit. King's Landing was spared. But the city didn't erupt in celebration. It froze. Because as the sun rose, two men now stood in claim to the throne, Rhaegar, true-born prince and dragon's heir, and Ned Stark, the man named heir by a mad king but crowned in the people's trust. and far in the east, under shadow and starlight, a silver-haired girl opened her eyes and whispered, "Brother." The Iron Throne had claimed another life, but spared the city. Aerys was gone, his charred corpse dragged from the base of the throne by silent gold cloaks. Jaime Lannister stood like a statue, sword in hand, blood drying on his white cloak. No one moved, no one spoke. Only Ned Stark broke the silence. "Take him away," he ordered softly. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Ned stared at the throne, cold and jagged, remembering the madness that had spilled from it. He did not want it, but it clung to him like a shadow. In the streets, small folk whispered, "Ned Stark saved us." In the taverns, the wolf stopped the dragonfire. But the wolf was now caught in a trap of blood and steel. Rhaegar entered the city hours later. He rode slowly, eyes full of fury and grief. His father was dead. His capital had fallen. His crown, though unclaimed, was now balanced between fire and frost. The first thing he saw was the great fire consuming the pyromancer's chambers. Ned had ordered them burned. The second was the corpse of Sir Rossart, Aerys's chief firestarter, strung up near the Red Keep. "This is justice," Rhaegar spat at Ned when they met again, face to face. "This is your peace?" "I spared the city," Ned answered. "Jaime killed the king. I ordered no crown, no death." "But you carry the weight of both," Rhaegar said bitterly. The lords began to gather. Lord Hoster Tully, cautious but firm, backed Ned. So did the Aryns and many in the Riverlands and the north. Even a few Stormlanders began to see in him the image of a reluctant king, just, fair, untainted by prophecy or blood madness. But Rhaegar had allies too. Dorne stood behind him, still bleeding from Elya's humiliation. The Reach remained tied to the old ways, and many still believed the prince was the realm's only true salvation. In the Red Keep, two councils formed. One met in the throne room beneath dragon skulls. The other met in the gardens, beneath falling leaves. One spoke of legacy, prophecy, and destiny. The other of healing, order, and law. And the people watched, waiting for one to break. Rhaegar proposed a solution, joint rule. "Let me wear the crown," he said to Ned, "and you will be my hand, my shield, my balance." But Ned shook his head. "I cannot serve a crown that sees only dragons. I serve the people." The divide grew. Then came the trial of Jaime Lannister. Rhaegar demanded his execution. He slew the king he swore to protect. But Ned refused. "He saved thousands. He did what I could not. He stopped the fire." Rhaegar's anger burned. "Then you shield traitors now?" "I shield the realm from vengeance," Ned answered. That night, Sir Arthur Dayne met Ned in the Godswood. He was the last of the Kingsguard still loyal to Rhaegar, and perhaps the dead king. His sword, Dawn, gleamed even in darkness. "You are not a usurper, Lord Stark," Dayne said, "but neither are you the future. You are the storm before it passes." "And what are you, Sir Arthur?" Ned asked. "A sword with no king." Whispers spread that Dayne would challenge Ned, but no duel came. The realm was too fragile to bleed again. Catelyn urged Ned to return north. "Let Rhaegar have it," she whispered. "He will never forgive you. Let them fight over it and leave it behind." But Ned could not leave chaos. Not with wildfire still hidden in tunnels, not with Tywin Lannister circling like a vulture, not with the people crying for someone, anyone, to give them peace. Then came the raven from the wall. The White Walkers stirred. A wildling army gathered. Winter had begun. For the first time in history, both Rhaegar and Ned stood in the same chamber and knew they could not turn away from the north. "We are not finished," Rhaegar said, "but this can wait." "Only if we survive the winter," Ned replied. And so, with steel sheathed and thrones ignored, the two would-be kings turned northward, toward the threat that cared little for crowns or bloodlines. But peace was only a breath long. The crown still hung in the air, unclaimed, and far across the sea, a girl named Daenerys Targaryen stared at the waves, dragons in her dreams, and the fire of vengeance in her heart. The North welcomed no kings, not in name, not in pride. But Winter did not care who wore the crown. Ned Stark rode beneath the grey skies of his homeland, the cold wind biting into his skin like a reminder of who he was, Warden of the North, not heir to the Iron Throne. Beside him, cloaked in red and black, Rhaegar Targaryen surveyed the snow-covered hills of the Wolfswood with a mix of awe and unease. The prince, raised in fire, found little comfort in a land that buried its dead in silence. Their uneasy alliance had held barely. Word from the wall had forced it, reports of shadows moving beyond the frost-fanged ridges, villages abandoned, rangers never returning. The dead were rising, and with them, the bitter truth. No crown would matter if all of Westeros turned to ice and ash. Winterfell stood tall, its towers black against the snow. Ned's return was met with cautious celebration. Catelyn, her face lined with worry, held him close but said little. Maester Luwin handed Ned a stack of ravens, all bearing news of fear, white-eyed. Corpses, ancient symbols carved in frozen wood, whole herds slaughtered and left untouched. Rhaegar's presence cast a long shadow across the hall. The North remembered the Dragon Prince. They remembered the rumors, the war, the blood. His mere presence was a provocation. But Ned asked them to trust. For now. The lords gathered. Gretchen, Umber, loud and restless, spat at the floor when Rhaegar entered the room. We march beside the man whose father would have burned us alive. He's not his father, Ned said sharply. He stands against the dead, like us. That must be enough. But it won't be, murmured Lady Barbary Dustin. Not for long. Jon Snow, still just a boy of 10, watched the debates in silence. He had no titles, no claims, just questions. Why did his father look at the prince with such heavy eyes? Why did the men mutter of betrayal, even as the snow kept falling? That night, Ned stood at the crypts of Winterfell. He lit a torch and knelt before the statue of Lyanna. Her stone eyes stared forward, emotionless. "I kept your secret," he whispered. "But now the world you feared is here." Behind him, Rhaegar approached slowly. "This is where she lies?" "Yes. She never told me what she truly wanted. You wouldn't have listened." The silence between them deepened, then broke. "She gave me a son," Rhaegar said softly. "Did she name him?" Ned didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. Outside, the army was forming. Northmen, Arryn knights, even a handful of Crownlanders, those who chose to believe. But numbers weren't enough. The Night's Watch had sent warnings. The wall would not hold forever. The old spells were fading. The dead were learning. Jon, too young to fight, was left behind with the women and old men. He watched from the walls as Ned and Rhaegar led their host north. But danger came not just from the snow. In King's Landing, Tywin Lannister made his move. With Aerys dead and Rhaegar gone, he declared support for neither faction, but maneuvered his banners across the Riverlands, gathering loyalty by gold and threat. And in the south, a new storm brewed. Daenerys Targaryen had grown in exile, from a frightened girl to a calculating flame. Her brother Viserys had been killed by Dothraki warriors after a failed power grab. Alone, she rose, quiet, patient. And now, word of Aerys' death and Rhaegar's fractured kingdom had reached her. She would not beg for a crown. She would take it. In the haunted woods near the wall, the first battle began. They came with the night, pale, silent, relentless. The White Walkers moved with an intelligence that defied nature, cutting through scouts and watchmen like mist. Rhaegar fought with fury, his Valyrian blade glinting blue against the darkness. Ned fought with grim resolve, his men holding the line even as others broke, but the dead kept coming. They were only the vanguard. The true storm still lingered beyond the frost, waiting for the living to exhaust themselves in arrogance. And so it was in those frozen fields, surrounded by the dead, that Rhaegar and Ned saw the truth. This was not a war for thrones. This was a war for the soul of the world. The final battle didn't begin with a trumpet call or the clash of swords. It began with silence, a silence so deep it strangled the very air. The North had braced itself, but no wall of steel, no ancient keeps, no great house banners could hold back what marched from the lands of eternal night. At the shattered remnants of the wall, beneath an endless sky of ash and snow, the armies of the living made their last stand. Eddard Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen stood side by side, not as rivals, but as brothers in arms. Their banners, wolf and dragon, flew together for the first time in history, and for the last. The White Walkers came with winter in their eyes, and death at their heels. Their whites crashed upon the living like a tidal wave of cold rot. Spears shattered, shields splintered, screams pierced the wind. Ned fought like a man with nothing to lose. Every stroke of his sword was for the North, for his children, for the realm he never wanted to rule. Beside him, Rhaegar danced through the chaos, his Valyrian blade singing, his armor painted with the blood of monsters. He fought not for prophecy now, but for life. The stars had gone quiet. Only blood mattered. But no matter how many they killed, the dead kept rising. In the center of the field, beneath the ancient heart tree of a lost godswood, the Night King emerged. Tall, silent, crowned in ice, he raised a hand, and hundreds of fallen soldiers stood once more, men Ned had known, friends, brothers, and then Jon Snow appeared. He rode out from the shadows of the trees, ghost at his side, a flaming sword clutched in his young hands. The boy who had watched in silence had become something more, something old, something forgotten. He didn't speak. He simply charged the Night King. The final duel was not between kings, but between forgotten bloodlines. Jon, born of ice and fire, moved with a fury that seemed not his own. The Night King, ageless and terrible, met him blow for blow. All around them, men died. Rhaegar fell to his knees, wounded. Ned was dragged from the field, half dead, blood staining the snow. Sir Arthur Dayne died defending the retreat. The gods wept frozen tears, and Jon Snow stood alone. In a final burst of flame and fury, he drove the burning blade through the Night King's heart. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the dead collapsed, all of them. The silence returned. But this time it was peaceful. When the survivors regrouped days later, only a third of the army remained. Rhaegar lived, barely. Ned survived, though he would never walk without pain again. But the world had changed. The people didn't cheer Rhaegar. They didn't kneel to Ned. They looked at Jon Snow, the boy who had no name, no title, and they saw their future. But Ned could not let that truth go unspoken any longer. He called Jon to the crypts of Winterfell, where the snow never melted, where the truth echoed louder than war drums. "You are not my bastard," Ned said, voice trembling. "You are Rhaegar's son, and Lyanna's." Jon's breath caught. "Then who am I?" "Jon Targaryen, born of love, not lust. A prince, but raised in the north so you could live." Rhaegar, overhearing the truth, said nothing. He only nodded. "Then the crown belongs to him." But Jon refused. "I saw what power does," he said. "Let someone else sit the throne. Let someone else bleed for banners." So the lords gathered, and for the first time in history, they chose not by blood, nor prophecy, nor conquest. They chose peace. Eddard Stark returned to Winterfell, never again to wear armor. Rhaegar sailed to Old Valyria to live and die as a poet, not a prince. And Jon Snow, he vanished into the north, beyond the wall, where no crowns existed, and the snow whispered no names. Years later, the realm stood, quiet, whole and free. And far beyond the frozen seas, a silver-haired queen stared into the flames, her dragons growing large, her heart burning with revenge. Because peace never lasts. Not in a world where fire and ice dance forever.